wasn't just one type of thing that met the needs of restoring the swale. So what we did is we looked at different places along the swale where we could put a series of practices. As the water moves down the swale, it's going to be filtered in some cases by what we call a bioretention cell, which has got an underdrain system, and it's got a soil media that will filter the runoff as it goes through those cells. And those, you don't see it here now, but in the spring, with your help, John, we're going to be planting all those areas with herbaceous plants. So there's those bioretention cells, and in some places where it wasn't appropriate for bioretention cells, either because it was too wet or because the grade wouldn't allow for the construction of the bioretention cell, we're putting in a couple wetland cells. And those, just as the name implies, there'll be small little pockets of wetland plants that'll back up and help again to filter the water as it comes through when there's a storm event that comes down through here. The other thing that you see, John, here is each of these individual cells is connected with what we call a stream segment, because this really used to be more of a, I guess, a kind of a headwater stream, not really a, you know, like an official stream, but this is the bottom of a pretty big drainage area. And so we wanted to replicate what it was like, that to give the sense this is where water flows, this is supposed to be a water place, and we want to enjoy the water. So the stream segments are a way to connect these different cells with something that looks like a stream, and during a storm will pretty much act like a dry stream bed.
All right, so of the practices, they're all kind of interrelated, and they affect each other as the water progressively moves down the swell.
Right, and our thought is by the time the water moves through each of these cells and each of these stream segments, there's going to be a lot of filtering. Some of those will back up the water temporarily during a storm and allow the water to percolate. There'll be some movement, a little bit of movement compared to the existing condition of water into the ground, but also quite a bit of water moving down through the system. So we think by the time it gets down to that pond, a lot of the nutrients will have been scrubbed out of it.
Well, that's what we like to hear. Are these practices widely used in other areas?
Yes and no. You know, this is a little bit unique because it strings together these different types of practices in one linear system. Most of the time what you see, and because of the local governments and the new stormwater regulations of Virginia, you certainly are seeing an increase in practices such as bioretention, either in parking lots or development sites. And in some cases you are also seeing wetland practices, and both of those practices are included in Virginia's new stormwater management program. And so they're not unusual practices. I guess what's a little unusual here is that we string them together in this linear system.
All right. What steps were taken to get these practices in place and in the ground here, and how long have you been working at this specific project location site?
Well, as you know, John, that's been a long process. It started, we've been at it for probably 2 years, because it started with a grant, because this is an impaired watershed, Smith Creek watershed. So your organization, the Soil and Water District, received a grant from the state to do something about this watershed. Now, John, as you're aware more than anybody, this watershed of Smith Creek is largely agriculture.
It is.
So there's a lot of practices that were installed for the agricultural setting, but almost nothing had been done for this more suburban or town setting. And I think the point of the grant was to show that everybody's got to carry a little bit of the load.
That's good.
You know, in terms of these different land uses.